Hi, staff. This is Jared Wilson, teacher here at Swallows Charter Academy. I just wanted to report to you guys on a presentation on cyberbullying. It's kind of growing into a pandemic, if you will, with the idea that more and more cases are coming to light every day. Schools are starting to see this as a bigger problem, and it's largely due to the fact that the advancement in technology is growing so rapidly that schools, parents, students are finding many more scenarios in which those technologies are being used unethically and inappropriately among themselves and other individuals. So taking a look at cyberbullying is the act of repeated harassment through the use of technology. So it's no longer just face-to-face issues. It's going into social media platforms. It's going into cell phones, texting, you name it. What our students are doing both at school and at home is they are interacting with multiple ways that cyberbullying can occur. So when you're comparing cyberbullying to traditional bullying, you can see that there's some common threads. For example, you have intimidation, threats, rumors, exclusion. You have stalking. Where some of them are different is the cyberbullying focuses just on the use of technology, but it also includes things such as trolling, which is like a repeated offense where you are constantly attacking an author. Maybe they made a video, posted something online, and it's people just trying to provoke a response from that author, from that other student. You have frapping, where people are creating different accounts and posing as other people. Same thing, kind of like catfishing. They are using separate accounts or false accounts in order to manipulate situations, in order to provoke situations, and kind of hide and be anonymous behind that. The biggest thing that we're seeing with cyberbullying is the unlimited audience. So with traditional bullying, if there was a schoolyard fight, the people who saw it, the people who the damage had occurred, were the people who were there, the people that witnessed it. The audience stops with that. Same thing if you have an issue in the lunchroom or the cafeteria, you have an issue in your classroom. The students that are there in person are the ones who are part of the scenario, part of the atmosphere. They're the ones that it's limited audience. When you translate that to cyberbullying, you don't just have students in a classroom anymore. You have unlimited access by students, by adults, by anyone that has access to the internet. And so that audience piece really plays a significant role in the fact that there's no containing the situation. Ultimately, when an incident or a situation occurs, when it's online, like all things, it's very hard to prevent it or to take it completely off. So where do we see cyberbullying taking place? We see it on technologies for media. We see social media platforms. In 200,000 parties that participated in the survey at Florida Atlantic University, they found that 42% recognize Instagram as the number one media platform misused by users. Then you have Facebook at 37%, Snapchat at 31%, YouTube at 10%, and Twitter at 9%. I continue to break down in a pie chart just so that you can see those differences between the two and how much weight is put on each of those social medias. Something that I have seen personally in my classroom, as well as other classrooms here at SCA, is the misuse of academic platforms. So for example, Google Docs. I have seen where, and not just bullying, but I have seen where students have misused Google Docs, where they'll create a Google Doc that appears to be a document that they're working for history. In actuality, beneath all the notes, students are able to pass around and basically send instant messages and communicate with one another without actually having to write it down on a piece of paper. And so students are able to take technology and manipulate it in a way that suits what their intentions are, which is why we have to be so careful with all the media platforms there are, with all the technologies we're introducing to our students, how we manage it. I found that the explicit and the specified time using that technology really helped prevent my classroom from having more issues versus if I were to give them more free time or more uninstructed time on those technologies, I saw more issues. Looking at the demographics. So just the demographics of who is at a higher risk. Data indicates that subject groups are commonly targeted. You have students with disabilities, students with mental illnesses, and members of the LGBTQ community. According to our Florida Atlantic University survey, there was a 12% spike in people who were targeted single-handedly or specifically due to their LGBTQ community ties. Facts and supporting data. 53% of adults surveyed have encountered cyberbullying, and it is that 7 in 10 adolescents encounter bullying before the age of 18. Then during 2019, the percentage of students that reported being cyberbullied jumped from 32% to 43%, with a spike in females and members of the LGBTQ community. One of the most interesting facts of this percentage change is that from the years 2006 to 2019, there were no jumps in percentages. It stayed at that 32%. But that was the kind of the introductional period of Facebook, all those different social media platforms that we're seeing today, that number has significantly skyrocketed in the last year. So to continue with facts and supporting data, data indicates that females are more likely to be both victims and perpetrators of cyberbullying. For ages 12 to 17, males have a 6% chance and females have a 15% chance. 37% of students 12 to 17 experienced cyberbullying. 60% of students witnessed peers being bullied. 37% of students admitted to not stopping or intervening. And 64% of students know their perpetrator from in-person interactions. So it's not only things that students are, meeting some random person online, they're being bullied, or maybe they're playing an online game, they're getting targeted. These are people they know that are using technology to, to bully them, to persuade them to do something hurtful to them. So why? Why are students being targeted? So one of the biggest categories for being targeted is at 61%, and that is appearance. And that gets broken down even further to 25% of it specifically addressing intelligence, 17% addressing race, 15% addressing sexual discrimination, 15% addressing financial, and then 11% on religion. And then it breaks down again into mean or inappropriate comments at 22%. Unwanted sharing of materials, so that would be students screenshotting another student's pictures, their statuses, and then sharing it without consent, and then rumors or gossip at 20%. So looking at evolution, technology is constantly changing and becoming a larger part of our lives. Like technology, the way students are being bullied and targeted is growing substantially, thus resulting in a higher number of cyberbullying. I wanted to break down this chart just a little bit more, and you can quickly see that the daily and weekly, these are the schools that are indicating that they see it on a daily or weekly basis that there has been cyberbullying. That grew 4%. My next category is schools that identified this happening on a monthly basis, and this had a growth of about 5%. And then the occasional growth grew about 9%. So these are schools that don't usually see it, but is, again, showing the biggest gap or the biggest growth. Where we see a decline is of 18%, and that is showing the number of schools who never see cyberbullying and now do have an increase of incidents. So as this showing that it goes down is kind of misleading in the fact that it looks like there's been something handled or something positive, but in actual, you were looking at the fact that schools who never see cyberbullying issues are now seeing it. The effects, long-term effects of cyberbullying. We are looking at depression, school attendance, academic performance, poor health, retaliation, in severe cases, suicide. And along with academic performance and school attendance, you start to see athletes not perform. You start to see students in after school clubs not wanting to go. You start to see students not wanting to be at school anymore. And it begins to affect all aspects of their lives. We can use these top 10 tips to help our students really combat other students, other situations, because realistically, we are not going to be able to be at every scenario and every situation these students occur in. But what we can do is we can give them the skills, we can give them the mindset to stand up for themselves and to get the help they need so that they're in a constant and safe environment. I'll leave this up for just a second so you can pause if you'd like to take notes. And then we will go on to the second set. There is the second set of those so that we can record. I can also share this out as well. So laws and regulations. How can laws and regulations help protect students from cyberbullying? So 49 states have adopted state laws that are directly tied to cyberbullying. I believe it's Montana is the only one that does not. Within those laws, cyberbullying is almost a segue to where if they are provoking a student or stalking, for example, there's laws that particularly pertain to cyberbullying but are linked to those stalking laws. And that's kind of how the state legislature has worked with students in the past. If they've committed or they're a perpetrator of one of those, they graduate from that cyberbullying law into the traditional laws. So those laws also require that all schools provide school policy to address bullying and cyberbullying, and also that off-campus incidences may be approached by schools if the incident is found to be a distraction to student learning or has created an unsafe learning environment. What can schools do? Schools can include these elements to help school policy: specific definitions of harassment, intimidation, and bullying, graduated consequences and remedial actions, procedures of reporting, procedures of investigating, language specifying off-campus behavior, substantial disruption of learning, or infringement of student rights, and then procedures to prevent cyberbullying. As I comb through our school policy here at SCA, it does appear that we have all of those steps in place. But as always, it's important for us to keep updating our policy and making sure we can be as compliant and protective as possible. There's a few specific cases that are outlined. Zeno versus Pine Plains Central District. This is where a student was awarded $1 million from the school district. And the courts had ruled that the district didn't provide adequate support to prevent the child from being bullied. And so in this case, the schools had stopped the bully, they had stopped the interaction, but they didn't continue the follow through to make sure that that student would be, safe or protected from more bullying coming from that student. The next one is Kowalski versus Berkeley County Schools, and a student created an online profile page despairing another student, and after receiving the suspension, the student sued the school district for infringement of the First Amendment. Courts found the school district in the right to discipline the student for attacking another student. So what happened in this, a student created a Facebook page or a social media page in which it directly linked the attack of students, where other students could then join in, they could view it, they could contribute to it, and personally attack another student. This was a tricky case for schools because it balanced on that idea of personal freedom, being able to use your First Amendment. Fortunately for these students, the school was able to show that no, this was a case that a student was personally attacked. Other cases, you have Phoebe Prince, who was cyberbullying resulting in a student suicide, and it really highlights the fact that these cyberbullying cases take a much greater toll on our students than we are able to see. So much is happening in the dark that we really have to bring everything in light to understand it. It goes beyond the playground and the cafeteria. Another good example is the K-8 charter school Highline Academy in Denver. and they did a great job of reaching out to parents saying, hey, here's the situation at hand. Here's the cybering things. We're not pursuing anything yet, but we wanted to make sure you knew so that you could best protect your students.